All right, guys, we're going to talk a little bit about domain and range and remind ourselves what it means. Okay, so remember that the domain is all of the possible x values that can go into a function, and then the range are all the possible y values that come out of that function. So the domain is all possible inputs, and range is all possible outputs. So what does it actually look like on a graph? Well, we look at this and we say, what are all the possible x values for this function? Well, it would be every point on this function that has an x value. And some of you might think, well, that means this point, this point, this point, this point, and this point, right? Well, here's what you forget, is that this line means that there are points. In between here and here, there are points all the way. And in between here and here, there are points the whole way. All of these are points. So our domain would be from here all the way to here. Okay, so how does that look? Well, I drew a little box around it because I want to draw a box that encloses my entire function, but no more, right? So I want this to, like, I want it to just bound my function on the outside, right? So I just made boundaries for my function, and I want to make sure the entire function fits inside of those boundaries. So I went, so you got to go, down here is our lowest one, and there's our highest, and there's our left and our right, and this shows that it takes our entire function but no extra space, okay? So then we say, okay, so this box that holds our function, we want to figure out what's the lowest possible x value that still is inside the box. Well, that's negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the lowest possible value that's still inside the box would be negative 6. So that's the lowest part of our domain. And is negative 6 inside the box? It is, because see, this is a filled in circle. And the filled in circle means we have a closed bracket, because that says negative 6 is actually inside the box, because that filled in circle shows that. Now let's see, what's the highest possible x value in our box? Well, it's this one, which is 6. And is 6 inside the box? Yep, it sure is. So we're going to do a closed bracket on that as well. So that's the domain of this function. Now let's just take a look at the range. Well, the range is the lowest y value to the highest value in our box, right? What's the lowest possible thing that would come out? Well, that's y equals 0. So our range, we have 0. And the highest possible number that can come out is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And both of those are included because, again, they have closed points on the edge of the box, which means that we include this point, right, on our function. This point exists on our function. So let's look at another one. This one, we are going to go from negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So our domain on this one starts at negative 7. And you see we have a box drawn around it, and this value right here, this closed circle, means that there is a value inside the box for negative 7. So we're going to use a closed bracket, and then we're going to say, what's the highest possible value that we can have inside of our domain and range? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 5, but if we look, this has an open circle, and that open circle means I'm going to get really, 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 really close to 5, but I'm not actually going to include 5. And so in this case, we would use an open bracket, just like the open circle, open bracket, because it means, hey, inside my box, I have numbers really, 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 really close to 5, but 5 isn't actually inside of the box. It's not actually inside of our domain. There is not a point on this function where x equals 5. That's what that open circle means. Okay, so let's take a look at the range. Well, the range, the lowest value is 1, 2, 3, negative 3. And that's included because this is this point right here on the function that exists. And then the highest value is 1, and that is excluded with an open bracket because we have an open circle at the top. Let's look at one more. So we have this one here, and this one's a little tricky because you can't actually draw a box around it because there's nowhere left and right to go, right? So let's remember the definition of domain. The definition of domain is all the possible x values on the function. So do we have x values here, or here, or here, or here? No, we don't. The only place we have x values is right here. And that's at x equals negative 5. It's the only place on the entire graph where there are actually x values. But what about our y values? What y values do we have? Well, let's look. We start at -2 and we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we start at -2 and go to 6. But right here, we actually aren't at -2. We've got an open circle at -2. So the lowest point we can go is really, 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 really close to -2, but not quite -2. So we're going to have open circle, open bracket. And then we're going to get really, 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 really close to 6, but we're not going to take 6. And so that's open circle, open bracket here. So I hope that helped you understand domain and range a little bit more.